Are you serious? What about all your teachings to Sean and me about not taking justice into our own hands? Or that two wrongs don't make a right? I guess I tried too hard to instill a sense of honor in you boys. Tell me, Danny, if Zach... My father raised his hand to silence me when I opened my mouth to interrupt him. Let me finish. If Zach had come to your house a month ago and told you to your face that he was going to steal Claire from you, that he was going to take her right here and now, would you have stood up to him? Would you have fought him for her? Of course. My father merely raised one eyebrow. That was enough for me to understand. Oh, okay, I get it. Finally, Sean said. The only difference is that this bastard didn't have the guts or the decency to say it to your face. True, but Claire is also to blame. She may even have been the instigator. The letters suggest that she came up with a lot of what they did, and I can't go and punch her in the face, can I? No, you can't, but we'll deal with her another way, Dad agreed. But as for your cousin, I don't care. He should have refused. Not only that, you were his friend. He should have left. Maybe take a closer look, but still leave. But he didn't. Okay, you've convinced me. Let's think about how I can do this without going to jail. Next chapter. The weekend flew by faster than I thought it would. My family rarely left me alone. They made me make plans, and Dad and Sean's plans were a little different from Mom and Mel's. It was the best they could do. It helped me focus and keep the pain and grief at bay. And, perhaps most importantly, it turned my boiling, ready to explode rage into something cold, relentless, and determined. Something constructive, not destructive. Mom and Mel edited my announcement and made sure it was placed not only in the local newspaper, but also in a free newspaper and another publication from a neighboring town that was popular with locals for its sports coverage. The announcement appeared in all the newspapers the following Monday and was printed every day for a week. Mom, bless her heart, wanted everyone in our town to see the ad. Claire called several times and wrote me a long letter. I forwarded her calls to voicemail, where she left me messages as long as essays. They all boiled down to one thing. She loved me, not to abandon our love and the 12 happy years we had spent together. I snorted. Hadn't she rummaged through her things and discovered that her love letters were gone? I had repacked her books, but still, hadn't she figured it out? Was she so conceited that she thought I knew nothing about her affair? Had she really tried to deceive me? To be arrogant? Did she know so little about me that she thought my feelings could be turned off like a tap? Apparently so. The only awkward moment was during Sunday dinner at my mom and dad's house, when Claire showed up just as we were about to sit down at the table. Mel and Sean immediately took Maddie and Declan out to the backyard so they wouldn't hear what happened between my mom and Claire. Thank goodness they did, because Claire put on a real show, crying and sobbing. My already high regard for my mom grew even more. She remained unmoved by Claire's emotional display. Please, Ellie, you have to stand up for me. I don't know what's gotten into him, why he's acting so irrationally. Maybe he's having some kind of emotional breakdown. Please convince him to talk to me. He loves me. I know he does. He couldn't just stop loving me like that. In my opinion, dear, he never loved you. There's nothing you can do about it. If in 12 years of living together you couldn't inspire him to love you with words or actions, I don't see how one more conversation is going to change anything. Now, if you don't mind, I have guests and dinner. And she slammed the door in that bitch's face. Next chapter. On Monday evening, the first drop fell on the table. Claire had either read or received notification of the breakup, and at 5:30, a hysterical woman appeared at the door, spouting the usual nonsense about cheating. Luckily for me, Sean came home from work. Knowing he was there for me helped me keep my composure. I had never been so grateful to my family for their "don't leave Danny alone" plan. I knew he would save me if I lost control or strayed from our plan. Danny, you have to believe me. It's not what you think. I can explain everything. Honestly, did she really think I was that stupid? Maybe she was just making excuses. After all, she had managed to deceive me for 12 years. But even if that was the case, what other explanation could there be? Standing next to Danny and watching you walk down the aisle is the most perverse, most depraved thing I've ever seen, or do you really want to have my child? Did she really think she could convince me that it was innocent, justifiable, acceptable, reasonable behavior, all of the above? Listen, it doesn't matter, Claire. It really doesn't matter. It just shows that it's time to move on. Our marriage is over. No! Claire shouted so loudly that I was sure the neighbors could hear us. It seemed like my mother was right. For some reason, Claire wanted to save our marriage. No, it can't be like this. I love you, Danny. Please give me a chance to explain. You have to give me a chance to explain everything. I don't owe you anything, Claire. And explaining to you what you're doing with my cousin is a waste of time. I don't care. Please, Danny. Despite what you said, I know I hurt you and I really didn't mean to. Please let me explain. I sighed impatiently. I gave this bitch a chance to explain not because I wanted to hear her lies. Thanks to my family, I had finally overcome that painful need, but because my mother had offered Claire the opportunity to hang herself on her own lies, figuratively speaking. Still, she would have to work for it. Gone were the days when she looked at me with puppy dog eyes and got everything she wanted. What's the point, Claire? You have to understand, Danny. If you let me explain, I know I can make you understand. I hummed again, looking at my watch. Fine. I'll be there tomorrow evening at 5:30. You'll have 30 minutes. My tone was sharp, making it clear that I didn't want this. Thank you, Danny. You won't regret it, I promise. Where do you want me to meet you? Here. I didn't trust that bitch with the yoga mat as far as I could push her with my pinky finger. I needed more than a phone recording. I needed privacy, but I also needed witnesses in case things went wrong or she tried to lie about what was said or done during the meeting. If the recording was going to be made at my house, I could invite someone from my family. Thanks, Danny. Thanks a lot. Claire took a step forward, closing the distance between us, and put her hands on my shoulders. She stood on her tiptoes and leaned in to kiss me. Her intentions were obvious. Did she really think that if she managed to trap me, I would melt and forgive her for everything? I couldn't tell if she was arrogant or deluded. I grabbed her hands, stepped back, and pushed her away at the same time, causing her to lose her balance and stumble. I shuddered, showing my disgust on my face. Please don't you dare show me any tenderness. I'm so sorry. I just love you and miss you, Danny. Whatever you say, Claire. See you tomorrow night. Next chapter. Tuesday began clear and sunny, with no hint of the unexpected turn of events to come. I was finishing up a beautiful teak kitchen countertop when I got a call from the local radio station. It turned out that Haley, one of the hosts of the morning show Oscar and Haley, had read the announcement about our breakup and learned my name because she was friends with Dee, another cousin on my mother's side. I guess it's true that it's a small world. Haley contacted Dee, who in turn contacted my mom and Mel. My mom and Mel happily shared their love letters with my cousin, who, with their permission, passed them on to Haley. I was torn between disgust at having my personal affairs exposed to the world and excitement at the possibility that Claire and Ratzak might finally be publicly humiliated. To say I was confused would be an understatement. I felt dishonored, as if I couldn't satisfy my wife and remain faithful to her. But as they say, revenge is a dish best served cold, and if my grave is one of shame, I will accept it. What did I care what a bunch of strangers thought of me? The people I cared about knew who I really was, and more importantly, deep down, I knew it too. Despite my moments of doubt, I talked to Haley for a long time. She seemed sympathetic and kind. For some reason, her intrusion into my personal life didn't feel like an intrusion. Dee had apparently said a lot of unnecessary things to me, and that gave me strength. To me, it meant that my extended family was standing up for Danny's corner. At the end of the conversation, I agreed to do a live interview on Friday morning and allowed them to use some of the letters from my website and Facebook page. To keep the broadcast from getting too long, some words and phrases had to be edited out, but she assured me that the gist would remain clear. Over the next few days, they will discuss the topic of infidelity, encouraging listeners to send in their stories. My interview on Friday will be the culmination of their forum. We agreed to meet the next day so I could sign a release form for the letter to be published. If the show goes as planned and the audience reacts as Haley predicts, Claire and Zach will be judging their peers. They probably won't face jail time, unfortunate as that may be. But then again, not all prisons have bars. Next chapter. I looked around and shivered. My clothes weren't really appropriate for a meeting in a cafe. I got out of the truck and smoothed my jeans and t-shirt to remove the sawdust. I wiped my work boots with a rag. I shrugged. The result wasn't perfect, but it would do. Nothing I could do about it. I had to make a living, and I didn't have time to change. Entering the trendy cafe Haley had chosen, I stopped and looked around. I knew what Haley looked like from billboards and announcements about her appearance at the Oscars on the bus. I spotted her bowed blonde head in one of the booths. Good, at least we'd have some privacy. I watched her glance at her watch, then look up. I smiled and raised my hand in thanks. She raised her hand and smiled back. She was of average height, but that was the only thing about her that was average, as far as I could tell. She looked much better in person than she did in the publicity photos. Her hair reminded me of Meg Ryan in the movie with Matthew Broderick. Addicted to something? Love? I couldn't remember. Her hairstyle was quite funny. Short, tousled hair stuck out here and there, and long bangs hung over her forehead. Daniel, she asked. Her voice was hoarse like Emma Stone or Demi Moore. Please call me Danny. Her smile widened, and we shook hands. Her handshake was pleasantly firm. I feel like I already know you, she said, sitting down in her seat. Di used to talk about you and Sean a lot at school. She'll probably kill me for telling you this, but she often complained that you were her cousin. Well, tell her that Sean often regretted that they were cousins too. Haley laughed, and the pleasant sound enveloped you and warmed you. Don't you regret it? No, I smiled. I was too busy looking at Jilly Clark. Think of Dolly Parton and you'll know what I mean. She defied the laws of physics. I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of ordering you a cappuccino. I thought it would be a safe choice. You're welcome. We smiled awkwardly at each other, not knowing how to broach the subject that hung in the air. I felt a little better. The fact that she was uncomfortable asking me about Claire's infidelity showed that she had a human side, that my pain and betrayal weren't something she was used to. I looked into her eyes and was surprised to see that they weren't blue or gray. As I had expected, they were green. Very green. In fact, I couldn't remember ever seeing eyes that green. They didn't sparkle like emeralds, but rather shimmered like the shiny leaves of the peace lily that usually stood in the center of my mother's dining room table. She reached across the table and touched the back of my hand. I read the letters, Danny. They're terrible. I can't even imagine how you felt when you found them. Can you tell me about it? I studied her, looking for signs of deception or feigned sincerity. I found none. Maybe we can decide later what to leave out. There are details I definitely don't want to share with everyone. Of course, that goes without saying. I don't want to know out of some twisted curiosity or some sick voyeuristic tendency. I need to know so I can prepare questions. I should warn you that Oscar isn't known for being respectful and may say some hurtful things to make people laugh or stir things up. I promise I'll only use phrases that you're comfortable sharing with our audience. I nodded. Taking a deep breath, I stared at my hands clenching the coffee cup. Thank God she ordered a large one. I needed every drop. I tried to look at her as I told my story, but I couldn't hold her gaze. Every time I looked at her, she looked back at me, her expression serious but kind. I told her everything. Not only about how I found the letters, but also about Claire, whom I thought I knew so well, and about our marriage. There was something about Haley that demanded the truth. But with every word that came out of my mouth, I wondered how wise it was to be so brutally honest. I could only hope that my faith was not in vain. That's it. Not very pretty, is it? No, it's like some kind of terrible B-movie. That's what Mel said. If I hadn't heard and seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it was possible. It's too strange. It's unreal. It's impossible to imagine that two normal, ordinary people could behave like that. Truth really can be stranger than fiction. Yeah, and I'm just a blind fool who didn't suspect a thing. Don't blame yourself, Danny. You didn't notice the signs because you weren't looking for them. And why would you? You thought you were happy in your marriage. When I was studying communications, I took a psychology class, and there was a name for this. God, what was it? Haley closed her eyes, frowned, and tapped her forehead quickly. I couldn't help but smile. The gesture was cute. I got it. She beamed like a Christmas tree. It's called confirmation bias or something like that. I raised my eyebrows. God, that sounds like an ambiguous expression. What exactly does it mean? When you love someone and believe that love is mutual, it affects how you perceive your loved one's words and actions. Essentially, you believe that Claire loved you, so everything she said or did, you interpreted in a way that confirmed your belief. It took a bolt from the blue to make you change your mind. The fact that you found the letters was that bolt. So I'm not an idiot? Far from it, I smiled. Well, that's encouraging. Did you love her very much? Yes, no, I sighed. I loved the woman I thought she was, but the woman in the letters wasn't the Claire I knew, so I guess I was in love with a fantasy. That must be hard to come to terms with. Yes. You seem to be in remarkable control of yourself. I would probably have cried. It hurts, but I hid it so I could deal with it later. What do you mean, hit it? Let me give you an analogy. Let's say you cut your leg so badly that it got infected and started to gangrene. Would you cry and moan and complain about how unfair it is, giving the infection time to spread further up your leg? Or would you shoot your leg off, amputate it, and mourn its loss, knowing that at least you saved the rest of your leg? Ah, I see. Yes, that makes sense. Like eating one piece at a time instead of trying to eat the whole loaf at once. I nodded, taking a sip of coffee. I suppressed a grimace of disgust. It was still warm. What are your plans for the future? Do you have any? Have you thought about it? To be honest, I feel a little lost, like a boat without an anchor. Until I found the letter, my whole life revolved around Claire and our marriage. I thought about fixing up the house, starting a family, taking one last big trip before we became parents. Now all that's gone. I took another sip of warm coffee, gathering my thoughts in the hope that I could express them in a way that Haley would understand. I'm a carpenter and joiner. I specialize in interior finishing. Kitchens, playrooms with wooden frames, restaurants, pubs, men's rooms, and so on. Usually it works like this. A builder or architect gives me the blueprints, I talk to the owner, and then I design and build something that fits the space and meets their needs. And now it feels like the plan for my life, the plan I've been working on for the last 12 years, has been ripped out of my hands and torn to shreds, and I have to come up with a new life. It's scary. I know that things will get easier, that I just have to take each day as it comes, but it's still scary. After all, what are the rules now? What restrictions? I need to rethink how I want my future to look. Haley reached out and put her hand on mine. That's very profound, even poetic. We should try to include that in your interview. We talked a little more, exchanging ideas for questions she could ask me to steer the conversation in the right direction. I told her about my upcoming meeting with Claire, and we agreed to call each other on Thursday evening if anything needed to be changed after that meeting. I waited for Haley to pay. She declined my offer to pay. I opened the door for her and walked her to her car, a small, sporty Renault. It suited her well. Let me guess, that's your car across the street. I smiled. What gave me away? The fact that it's a truck or all the toolboxes? Haley hummed. Both were important clues, but the deciding factor was your license plate. Dan07. I laughed. Yes, that's me, McCormick. Dan McCormack, licensed contractor. Oh, and comedian. That's funny. We laughed again and said goodbye. As I crossed the street to my truck, I suddenly realized that in those few precious moments, I had been happy, truly happy. Next chapter. I frowned, stopping halfway. I needed to look at my watch again. I rested my hand on the back of the chair and frowned even more. My hands clenched into fists, my knuckles almost white from the force. My throat hurt, and an unbearable lump formed in my throat. I tried to swallow it and frowned in pain. Gritting my teeth, I loosened my grip and unclenched my fingers, not surprised to find dents in the leather of the chair. Slowly, as if it were a huge weight, I lowered my chin to my chest. The movement was controlled and deliberate, but more out of stubbornness than because I was actually in control of my emotions. The only thing I couldn't control was the beating of my heart. It puzzled me. Why was it pounding like a freight train? Was it anger, resentment, nerves? Or was it the love I still felt for her? No, that wasn't it. The woman I loved wasn't the one who was about to knock on my door. That woman never existed. She was just a figment of my imagination, a mirage. But I mourned her. I missed her. I missed my delusion. Her loss left a huge void in my life. Breathe in, breathe out, repeat. Slowly, deeply, and soothingly. In complete silence that could be called meditation. It worked like a cooling ointment on an open wound. Of course, Claire and I had no chance of healing. We were burned to a crisp like coal from the moment she first spread her legs for him. I just didn't know it. Continuing to breathe evenly and waiting for my heart to calm down, I reminded myself of the plan. As much as I wanted to tear her to pieces with my words, I had to put that off. Claire would tell me everything herself, and I would just listen. I heard, but didn't see, Sean come up behind me. Taking one last deep breath, I raised my head and turned to him. With a reassuring smile on his face, he reached out and took me by the shoulder. Everything's ready. The video camera is pointed at the table and already turned on. I charged the battery last night, so you're safe in case of any unforeseen circumstances. Thank you for everything, Sean. He waved away my thanks. You would have done the same for me. Are you ready? More than ever. It's better to get it over with. Sean nodded. So? I laughed. Yeah, I know. Boring, boring, boring. You can do it, Danny. One conversation and the worst is behind you. I barely had time to nod before there was a terrifying crash in the hallway. Sean and I looked at each other. He smiled and gave me a thumbs up when he saw that I was keeping a straight face. I'll wait in the dining room until you let her in. I stretched my neck and straightened my shoulders one last time, trying to shake off the tension that had built up between us before stepping out into the hallway to let my treacherous wife in. One look at her showed her unease. I found it amusing. Damn, it looked like her time at the spa had been wasted. What a shame. Claire, follow me. We'll have this meeting in the dining room. Oh, okay. The click of her heels followed me as I headed to the back of the house. Sean was standing by the sliding glass doors leading to the backyard. He turned when he heard us enter the room. I noticed her surprise when she saw Sean standing next to me. Danny, Hi, Sean. Sean nodded in greeting. Claire, I'll wait on the patio, Danny, while you and Claire talk. Sean opened the door and giving me one last look went inside. Turning back to Claire, I noticed that she had blushed, and I assumed she knew why I had made sure Sean was there. With him as a witness, she had no chance of making a scene and accusing me of something that could hurt me in the divorce. Besides, it hid the fact that I was recording our meeting. Why do both? Would you like something to drink? Water, please. I deliberately placed her glass where guests usually sat before taking my usual place at the table. Perhaps the signal would have been too subtle for her, but I didn't think so. As she lingered before sitting down in the seat I had indicated. Casually, as if I had all the time in the world, I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of water. I didn't speak or prompt her to talk, I just sat there watching and waiting. I, Danny, I'm so glad we can finally talk. I've missed you so much. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I have to say, I still love… Don't, Claire. I needed to say it. Please believe me. And when I explain everything and you understand, maybe we can… I've said enough, Claire. I don't love you. And I don't want to hear your declarations of love. You've wasted 30 minutes of my time. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, you lying, cheating bitch. To my surprise, she hesitated only for a moment. The look of shock on her face was fleeting, appearing and disappearing, soon replaced by a flash of irritation, as if I were a disobedient puppy who hadn't learned a new trick quickly enough. Surely she wasn't so deluded as to think that telling me she loved me would be enough for me to forgive and forget? She lowered her gaze to her hands, which were holding a glass of water, as I guessed, to hide her emotions. I don't believe you. I can't. You love me too much to just turn it off like a switch. She risked a glance at me, but didn't find what she was looking for. Her words didn't move me. She frowned and stared at her hands again. I'm sorry I hurt you, Danny. It wasn't my intention. I want you to know that it's not you. You didn't do anything wrong. It was something separate from us. You have nothing to do with this. With us. She fell silent, as if waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I wanted to. God, how I wanted to. I wanted to yell at her. You did this? Is that what you're saying? That you brought a third person into our marriage, and it has nothing to do with me? Next time, you'll say it was for my own good. I gripped the back of the chair harder to keep from jumping up and yelling at her. I'd really like you to explain to me how you had fun with my cousin and that I have nothing to do with it. How good it was for me. For us. Explain to me how it wasn't a betrayal of trust. How it wasn't a stab in the back. How it wasn't malicious and selfish. Instead, I took a sip of water. Danny, there's a lot you don't know about me. Things I never wanted you to know. I struggled not to raise my eyebrows in a sarcastic reply, humming to myself. Calm, neutral, boring. Calm, calm, neutral, boring, calm, neutral, neutral, boring, calm, neutral, boring, calm, neutral, boring, over and over again. As you know, I grew up in Broken Hill. It's a small town in every sense of the word. It seems like everyone knows everyone else. Well, I was known as a bit of a wild child. She sighed and turned away, showing me how red she had become. The blush spread down her neck to the collar of her blouse. More than a little. I was a slut. I had a reputation, a bad one. When my father was transferred to Kiyama during my last year of school, I took the move as a chance to start my life over. She looked at me, trying to gauge my reaction. When I didn't respond, she continued. I mostly succeeded, But as I discovered, the high life can be addictive. Sometimes I felt like I was ready to crawl out of my skin with the desire to break free. It was hard for me to accept how limited this life was compared to my past. I solved this problem by limiting myself. A couple of times a month I would go to Sydney or Wollongong, or down south to Navra, somewhere where no one knew me, and I would have a great time. Once I had had my fill, so to speak, I could spend the rest of the month being a good girl. She fell silent again, studying me and waiting for a response. I didn't say anything, just stared at her blankly. Then I was offered a promotion if I agreed to move to Newcastle. I met you a month after I moved. You were so sweet and wonderful, and we had such a great time together. For a while, my desire to live a promiscuous life subsided, but after 6 months it reawakened. By chance, I had to go to Sydney for a week for work, and I got hooked again. On the last night, I met Zach. He saw me doing something I shouldn't have been doing with some guy and cornered me. At first, I thought he was going to yell at me, but he didn't. He, oh my god, it's so complicated, told me that he liked promiscuous girls. That's how it all started. Tears streamed down her red cheeks, dripping from her chin onto her blouse. You have to understand that it was just part of a game we were playing. I didn't mean anything by it. It's hard to explain. She had enough tact to look away. It was satisfying a need, Danny. Nothing more. I didn't expect love, care, or security from him. I didn't want that from him. I wanted that from you because I love you. I didn't want to live with him. You're the one I wanted to grow old with. I swear, never loved him. It wasn't the same with him as it is with you and me. I struggled to suppress a growl of disgust, but I couldn't hold back the thoughts. They gnawed at her quietly. So now you're schizophrenic. Thanks for the insight. Danny, please try to understand. He satisfied one need. Nothing more. It wasn't emotional. Only physical. Not emotional. As if that mattered. It took all my self-control to remain calm and silent. My stomach clenched with the urge to respond. The bitter taste of bile filled my mouth because I could only respond in my mind. Someday, I told myself. Someday, I'll be able to say it out loud. I didn't mean to hurt you, Danny. I wish I could take it all back. Get a second chance. Was she sincere? Didn't she want to hurt me? How else could she have imagined this situation? It was a foregone conclusion that she would hurt me. The only question was when. How could she not understand that? And once she did, there was nothing that could help. The horse had bolted. She rode away, trampling my heart. Tears filled my eyes and slowly rolled down my cheeks. Were they real? Or was it part of her game? In fact, it didn't matter if they were real or fake, because they didn't determine the outcome of our conversation. Please say something, Danny. Say you understand. You don't understand. I truly believe that as long as you didn't know, you wouldn't be hurt. I wanted to protect you. To protect us, our love. Our sweet, sweet love. By being his whore once or twice a month, I could be a good wife to you the rest of the time. I'm so sorry, please forgive me. Please love me enough to forgive me. Her plea and apology stunned me. It was clear that she didn't consider herself a villain. Maybe not entirely innocent or a victim, but definitely not a villain. She saw herself as a victim of her addiction, as she called it. Did she really think I should forgive her and turn a blind eye to the fact that she was leading a promiscuous sex life to satisfy her need to behave like a whore once or twice a month? How could she not understand what she had admitted in her confession? I had already said that the Claire described in the letters was not the Claire I had loved and cherished. Now I knew it for sure. Her constipation allowed her to play a role. The role of a nice wife. It was a role, nothing more. Sweet Claire may have gotten more attention, but that didn't change the fact that the real Claire was a selfish slut. She was nervous, my silence clearly making her nervous. Danny, please, say something. I need to know what you think. Give me a second chance. We were happy. You were happy for 12 years. We can be happy again if you let me make it right. Please let me come home. Make it right? How could a decade of lies and deceit be made right? Disrespect? No. That was all I said to her, one word. Danny, please. I know I've been terrible. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be a better wife if you give me another chance. Doesn't our marriage mean anything to you? Can you really walk away so easily? I raised my glass and took the last sip of water, trying to extinguish the fire burning inside me and drown the rage that was about to burst out of my mouth. The injustice of her words tested my resolve. Would I give up on our marriage? Would I walk away so easily? It was her fault. She was the one who gave up on us without even giving us a chance to start a life together. She pretended to be someone she wasn't and doomed us to failure from the very beginning. I closed my eyes, took a sip, imagining myself diving into the cool, calm water of a meadow pond, and began to count. When I reached 10, I regained my composure. Yes, I can leave, and I won't even look back. I glanced at my watch. I think your time is up. My tears turned into sobs. Danny, I love you. Only you. I'm yours. I've always been yours. He was just doing his job. Don't leave us, Danny. Please give me a chance. I can make you trust me again. I can make you love me again. Just give me a chance. I've learned my lesson. I'll never let you down again. Enough, Claire. Calm down, please. This meeting is over. I stood up and without looking at her headed for the front door, opened it and waited. I waited for quite a while. She approached me, walking slowly, as if she were walking to her execution. She stopped next to me and looked up at me with pleading eyes. I love you, Danny. I love you so much. Come on, let's try going to a psychologist. Please, just say you'll think about it. A psychologist is useless. I don't love you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans for the evening. I quietly closed the door, proud that I hadn't given in to the urge to slam it. I turned and walked down the hall. The sound of Claire's sobs followed me, but I didn't look back or linger. Next chapter. Sean was in the dining room, leaning back in one of the chairs, taking a camera from the top shelf of the display case. I watched him put it on the table. Are you okay? He asked, grabbing my bicep. I knew he was ready to hug me if I needed it, but I was so full of rage that I needed movement, not comfort. Did you hear anything? A little? Can you believe it? She spent 12 goddamn years lying, cheating, and betraying me. 12 goddamn years of disrespect, and she thinks admitting she's a whore is going to fix things? That a simple "I'm sorry" accompanied by a few tears is going to make everything okay? Nothing she says or does is going to change the fact that she spent over 10 years cheating on me. I will never get those 12 years back. No matter what she does to make up for it, it will always be a part of our history. She unilaterally decided to satisfy her so-called addiction outside of our marriage without discussing it with me. And now she wants to cry poor me because she has to live with the consequences? The only reason she wants me to take her back is because she doesn't want to deal with the consequences. She's just afraid of losing her good girl status in the eyes of her family and friends. I agree, Danny. Whatever planet she's living on, it's not Earth. Yeah, I know. I think she thinks her affair should be treated the same way she took my car and crashed it, or accidentally threw my new cell phone in the washing machine. But Danny, Sean mimicked Claire's voice, I'm addicted to debauchery, so I can't be held responsible for my actions. I snorted and started pacing back and forth in front of the sliding glass doors. Did you hear her say that until I know about her affair, he's off limits to me? God, Sean, that's complete nonsense. I had to summon all my strength not to jump across the table and strangle that bitch. I'm not suffering because I didn't know anything. That's like saying cancer doesn't hurt because for X amount of time you didn't know it was lurking in your body. Try telling that to a cancer patient. Whether you know about it or not, cancer is still eating you from the inside, slowly killing you. It just does it quietly until it can no longer hide its ugly face. Sean patted me on the shoulder and headed for the refrigerator. He pulled out a couple of beers and handed me one. Here, I think you deserve it. Man, I was so proud of you. I don't know if I could have kept my composure when she was spouting all that nonsense. You even scared me. You sounded so formal and casual, like a school principal. Didn't you feel sorry for her? Did you think about trying to patch things up? No, not once. In fact, when I looked at her, I felt disgusted. All I saw was an actress playing a role. Nothing she said or did could convince me that our marriage meant anything to her. It couldn't. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given in to her impulses and invited him back again and again. She did things for him that she never did for me. With me, she was a sweet little doll. You read the letters. God, she asked him to be the father of her children. You know how long I asked her to start a family, and she was going to deny me even that. That's not love, that's hate. But even without all that, I refuse to live in quiet despair, wondering and doubting who the real Claire is. I don't want to live with a constant knot in my stomach, suspecting every time she's late or in a mood or, God forbid, not in the mood, and agonizing over whether she's really with me at that moment, or if she's pasted another guy's face on mine, and imagining she's doing this with him. I can't tell you how relieved I am to hear you say that, Danny. I'll admit, I was afraid she'd get to you and somehow convince you to forgive her. I wouldn't blame you. You put a lot of time and emotion into that woman, and I would support you if that's what you really wanted, but I just don't see you being happy if you go down that path. I nodded, continuing to pace the room. I felt like a bull stomping its hooves on the ground. I don't understand. If Claire wanted to have fun, why did she marry you? Why marry you at all? Why get into a serious relationship? She could have presented herself as a career woman, acted easygoing and casual, dated other people, and when one of you got tired of each other or someone else came along, you could have parted ways without any hard feelings. I nodded in agreement. Sean was right. Why get married at all if she needed entertainment to be happy? If a man didn't like that, then none of her husbands would work out. Exactly. For me, a big part of what makes marriage special is that from the day you stand at the altar in front of your family and friends and say your vows, you know that in saying those words, you are promising each other eternal fidelity. You know that you are promising her that she will be the only woman you will ever love. And the same is true in reverse. She promises to be yours and yours alone from that day forward. What makes marriage special without that vow of fidelity? How is it different from casual dating? Why make the commitment? Why make the compromises and sacrifices that are necessary for all successful marriages? Without her loyalty, there was nothing special about us. Without that trust and commitment to be faithful to each other, I don't think there can be real intimacy. And without that, she's just another check mark on my list. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but for me it's simple. Black or white, no shades of gray. She's either mine or she's not, no in between. I just don't know how to do it. And despite her assurances that she was mine, she wasn't. She never was. She was just pretending. Wow, I don't think Mom or Mel could have said it better. You should repeat some of that when you're interviewed. He winked at me. Since when did you become a philosopher, Dr. Dan? Probably from all the sawdust you've been breathing in over the years. I laughed, and Sean's teasing smoothed away my anger. Well, at least I wasn't struck by lightning, and that's what it would take to get through your thick skull. We clinked bottles. Touché. Good thing my brother's back. Do you think she really believes the crap she's spouting? I asked. Who knows? Maybe she just can't face the truth. I shrugged. Well, in her case, the truth definitely wasn't pretty. Sean grinned. She disappointed me. I was hoping she'd suggest turning a blind eye to what you did in revenge. I laughed, and not just a little. It was a deep, animal laugh, as if I had heard the funniest joke in the world. To even come close to what she and that piece of shit Ratzak did, it would take a year-long orgy. Next chapter. On Thursday evening, I was sitting in the backyard enjoying the sunset, fresh out of the shower, with a beer in my hand and my laptop on my knees, talking to Haley on the phone. I told her briefly about Claire's visit, not wanting to make things worse. While we were talking, I opened my email and read Haley's latest questions, discussing my answers with her. Knowing my intention to pretend to be indifferent, she had phrased them so that I could respond philosophically without revealing the full depth of my hurt and anger. I just hoped I wouldn't lose my composure and give away my strategy when Oscar started asking questions and making impromptu jokes. We couldn't use all the letters. If you remove all the EXs from the text, you're left with just a few pronouns and maybe the word the. You can see them on Facebook. We started posting them this morning, 1 per hour. The same thing is happening on our website. A few more will appear in the next couple of hours. There are already 500,000 comments under them. Most people are horrified. There are idiots who think it's normal, and 1 or 2 who joke that they'd like to know the number of the person who did it. And don't worry, I made sure that Claire's name and your name were blurred out of all the photos we used, so she can't sue you or anything like that. I'm not on Facebook. Haley laughed. Why doesn't that surprise me? But you should think about it. If not for a personal profile, then for business. Give me a second. I'll send you the ones we used. A few minutes later, the email arrived in my inbox. I opened the first 3, and it turned out that Claire, Ratzak, and I couldn't be identified by the letters. That was very important. I wasn't going to pay a bunch of money to that lying bitch for telling some fancy lawyer that I invaded her privacy. In letters and interviews, I would be D, Claire would be C, and Ratzak would be R. Not using Z for Ratzak was a kind of insurance. But any family members or friends who asked my mother or Mel for a copy of the letters, and they assured me that many would know who I was talking about. I was sure the news would spread from there. With a little luck, Claire and Ratzak would be so shaken that they would leave town. I was happy with what I had done. I didn't want revenge. In a way, the means found me. I just wanted to give people honest and direct answers to their questions, not justify their actions. In my opinion, if they don't think they did anything wrong, they have nothing to be ashamed of. If they don't want to go to prison, they shouldn't commit crimes. I regretted not letting Haley go, but I knew she needed to get to bed early and I had work to do. I cooked some pasta and checked the remaining love letters that the radio station had used in case anyone mentioned them in an interview. Then I started working on answers to Haley's questions, editing them as I went along. By the last run-through, my speech was fierce, relentless, monumental. It was a speech in words. Next chapter. Danny, this is Oscar. Oscar. Danny. My greeting was subdued. Oscar's was anything but. I was almost certain that this guy had ADHD. Even when he was sitting down, he seemed to be constantly in motion. It was obvious that in real life, he and Haley got along just as well as they did on air. They joked around as easily as Sean and I did. I wondered if they were a couple off camera. Their assistant, Zoe, bustled around me, setting coffee and apple Danish pastries in front of me and briefly explaining how to use the microphone and headphones. Her actions were strikingly realistic. I was about to talk about very personal things in front of an invisible audience that could number in the hundreds of thousands. A wave of nausea washed over me. My stomach muscles tensed, trying to hold back a swarm of angry hornets that had suddenly taken up residence in my belly. I couldn't tell if these pesky creatures were trying to escape through my belly button or my throat. All I knew was that I wanted them to calm down before I embarrassed myself. The commercials started. As soon as they ended, I turned on the computer. I looked at Haley in panic. "It'll be fine, Danny," she whispered. "Everyone's nervous. Once we ask the first question, the nervousness will go away." I nodded, not believing I wouldn't squeak like a mouse if I tried to speak. Haley took over the opening part of the interview, and she was right. By the third question, I had forgotten that thousands of people were listening to me. She guided me along the path we had chosen, and I was glad I was able to use analogies about gangrene and project plans without sounding like a complete idiot. "So, Dee," Oscar said, "forgiveness was never an option for you? You don't love C enough to forgive her weakness?" Instead of answering that question directly, Oscar, I'd like to turn it around. Why couldn't she love me enough to stay faithful? Or at least love me enough to be honest? Good question, but I want to ask how she managed to live like that for 12 years. Were you walking around with your eyes closed? Oscar, in a way, yes. A friend of mine who studied psychology at university explained it to me. I glanced at Haley, who frowned. "I think it's called confirmation bias, although I shouldn't quote that to you." "God, what's that?" Oscar laughed. "That sounds sinister. It doesn't mean you're a sociopath, does it? Should I call security or use my ninja moves?" Haley snorted. "Ninja moves?" "Yeah, I'm an origami master. I can fold my enemies into pretzels." I couldn't hold back a laugh. "Oh, then I'd better behave myself. I can't make pretzels. Seriously, though, I'm a salesman, and I'm used to reading plans, not people. I'm not a psychologist, so keep your fingers crossed that I don't mix up the explanations." Anyway, the point is that when you believe someone loves you, you interpret their words and actions in a way that confirms that belief. I looked at Haley for confirmation. She gave me a thumbs up. "You mean that for 12 years you believed she loved you and thought only good things about her, and that's why you were stunned when you noticed signs that she was cheating on you?" "Yes, that's pretty much how it was." I smiled. Now that I've been offered that explanation, I'll stick with it. That way I won't feel like such a gullible fool. "Friends, we have a busy line. Everyone wants to talk to D, so please hold. We'll get to you." "Hello, C. What would you like to ask D?" "Can't you find it in your heart to forgive R?" The woman's voice was shrill, which could have passed for nervousness to those who didn't know her, but I knew her. It was my Aunt Sally calling. "He's your cousin, after all." Too bad R couldn't remember that every time he made plans with my wife or wrote her love letters. Too bad he chose to forget our family connection every time he lied to my face and stabbed me in the back. So no, forgiveness is not an option. I'm afraid he's out of my life for good. The woman was sobbing, and my heart was breaking for my aunt, but I couldn't lie to her. I noticed Oscar and Haley exchange glances, realizing that C must be a relative. Oscar answered the rest of the call, easily cutting C off. Haley whispered to me, "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my heart was heavy. I hoped there wouldn't be too many more calls like that. The next call made me blush to the tips of my fingers. Darling, you have a wonderful voice. If you ever get tired of building, consider a career in radio. And if you ever need comfort, give me a call. Oscar laughed. Thanks, B. We'll be sure to mention your qualifications on the air. I'm sure you'll be a great help to Dee's bruised ego. I thought Oscar was joking, but 2 minutes later, Zoe was smiling from ear to ear as she placed a note in front of me. As expected, Bev, or B, had left me her number. The calls kept coming. Most of them were sympathetic and wished me well. One, I suspected, was a friend of Claire's, as she asked if I could somehow forgive the mistake with the letter C. A mistake? I'm not sure you can call it a mistake, G. To me, a mistake is coming home with lemon extract when your wife sent you to buy lemon juice, or turning left when you should have turned right. Maybe washing whites with colors and dyeing all her delicate clothes purple. Can you call it a mistake when it's been going on for 12 years and required planning, choices, lies, and covering up evidence? The phone line went dead. I looked from Haley to Oscar. Oh, I think we lost G. Many callers offered advice on how to cope with the loss, ranging from meditation to sand therapy to taking some time off in the wilderness. One even suggested using dolls representing key players to help me deal with my frustration. Oscar, of course, couldn't resist a joke about the Muppet Show, comparing Rat Zack to Cookie Monster. I wanted to argue. I always loved Cookie Monster as a kid. According to Haley and Oscar, the segment went well. Zoe laughed in agreement. Only Justin Bieber and Hugh Jackman got more phone numbers. Dude, it sounds like you've got enough consolation to make ends meet. Next chapter. Unsurprisingly, the interview didn't go unpunished. At 5:30, my soon-to-be ex-wife, burning with rage, knocked on my door. Daniel McCormack, open the door now. I looked up and saw my father, assigned to babysit for the evening. The show is about to begin. Just don't give her what she wants, Danny. She wants a reaction, so don't give it to her. Deny her. Keep your words cold, calm, and collected. I nodded. That's right. I walked down the hall and opened the door. I even managed to smile. Good evening, Claire. How could you? How could you read my letters on the radio? Now they're all over Facebook because of you. She lunged at me with 2 red spots on her cheeks. If looks could kill, I would have turned to ash. They were mine. They were personal. You had no right to show them to anyone. I smiled. Finally, we were seeing the real Claire. Personal? Really? It doesn't matter if you're talking about the apartment or this house. The fact remains that you kept them in books on a bookshelf, where I or any guest in our house could take them off the shelf and read them. This certainly supports my view that you didn't consider them confidential. Moreover, by making no special effort to hide them, it's fair to say that you wanted them to be found and shared. You still shouldn't have shown them, not without my permission. I shrugged. I was just following your lead when it came to making decisions about our marriage. Besides, I've seen lots of love letters on the internet. They evoke warmth and emotion in most people. You're clearly not ashamed of yours. After all, you kept many of them for years, so what's the problem? Don't pick on me, Danny. I sound like a slut. I shrugged and smiled, raising an eyebrow. Maybe I did the wrong thing, but it wasn't out of hatred. You were cruel. Maybe it was wrong, with a question mark. It wasn't hate? Asking another man to be the father of our child isn't hate and cruel? What planet does she live on? I almost blurted out my thoughts, but as soon as I opened my mouth, my father whispered in my ear. Stay calm. Keep your cool. Don't give her a chance to react. As you say, Claire. Her lack of emotion clearly annoyed her. Her face flushed even more than when I opened the door. I'll make you pay for this, Danny. First thing Monday morning, I'm going to a lawyer and taking this house away from you. I'll have you kicked out. Stop pretending. I'll make you pay dearly for humiliating me. Let's save time and move this weekend. You can move out, take over the mortgage payments, and pay for the workers needed to finish the repairs. The court will make you pay half. You may even have to pay alimony. I don't think so, Claire. You watch too much American TV. It's not like that here. You have a good salary. You can support yourself, so you're not going to have to pay alimony. As for the mortgage, my parents have offered to help me, but I won't need it if I move in with them, or Sean, temporarily. Why should they help you? You're able to work, you have a good job, and you earn good money. You're fine. Oh, but there is, Claire. I'm afraid the stress and anxiety over your betrayal have messed with my head, and today I made a mistake at work and hurt my back. It wasn't true, but I had an old sports injury that flared up from time to time, and I had to wear a back brace. That's that's nonsense, Claire hissed. I shrugged. Whatever you say, Claire. I watched her try to come up with something else to threaten me with. What method would she resort to in order to get her way? Suddenly, I grew tired of her and her games and decided to take action. Sure, Claire, we can always just get to the finish line, split the loot, and sell the house as is. But if we do that, neither of us will have anything left. I shrugged again. I could see that it annoyed her, so I made a mental note to do it as often as possible in all future dealings with her. So what? It's just money. I've worked too hard to let it go, she hissed. I swallowed the contemptuous laugh that had formed in my throat. She had worked too hard? She had planted a few herbs and rose bushes. What about all my nights and weekends? Then buy my share, and you can finish the renovations yourself. Claire narrowed her eyes and looked at me. What did she think I would do? Wither like a flower under a warm gaze? I raised an eyebrow as if urging her to respond. Instead, she turned abruptly and walked down the path, looking back over her shoulder. This isn't over, Danny. I'm going to a lawyer and I'm going to make you pay. I closed the door and returned to the patio, where I knew I would find my father. Did you hear about that? I asked, sitting down and accepting the soda he offered me. Yes, almost everything. I sighed. I wasn't as calm and collected as I should have been. I think at some point I let her see how angry I was. Nobody's perfect, Danny. She had her own plans and she was in a bad mood herself, so most of what you said probably went right over her head. I hope so. Do you have a lot of savings? About 60,000. Why? Well, you remember that your mother and I lent you money when you were 21 so you could start your business? Yes. I smiled, immediately realizing where my father was going with this. Well, son, your mother and I are taking out a loan. We're retired, and we need money for our old age. I smiled from ear to ear. First thing Monday morning, I'll write you a check to put in your bank account. Thanks, son. The loan was my idea. Mom and Dad always insisted it was a gift and said they wanted to help while they were still alive. They did the same thing for Sean when he became independent. Sean and I were proud and stubborn bastards and insisted on taking out a loan, even though we knew Mom and Dad would never accept money from us. I had never been so grateful for my stubbornness as I was at that moment, because after paying off the loan, I would have had only $10,000 left in my account. And that was my savings. Claire hadn't put a penny of it in there, and no court in the country could say I couldn't pay the debt out of that money. Dad sipped his soda, thinking about my garden. I think we'll take care of Sean's debt too. I nodded. My father was an excellent chess player, and Sean and I rarely managed to beat him. I saw how his strategic mind worked. After all, if he demanded that Sean repay the debt, no one could say that they were asking me to return the money just to keep it from Claire. Yes, Dad said thoughtfully. Mom and I are looking at several investment projects. I think we'll have the funds to invest now. Next chapter. As expected, the next few weeks were a roller coaster ride, with ups and downs. Claire followed through on her threat and hired a lawyer, and I received a letter giving me 7 days to declare my assets. After discussing it with my family, I decided not to hire a lawyer, at least for the time being. Once Claire saw the state of our assets, she would most likely settle quietly and disappear from my life. I asked 3 different real estate agents to provide a written appraisal of the value. I smiled politely when they all said that I would have to pay much more for the apartment. As I suspected, all of their appraisals were slightly higher than the mortgage value. I returned the information, along with copies of the bank statements, to Claire's lawyer, and informed them that they had 7 days to provide me with a declaration of Claire's financial status. This would upset her. On the other hand, the love letters had been widely publicized. Claire and Ratzak had received their 15 minutes of fame. The radio stations sent me a bag through Haley, filled to the brim with letters they had received and printed out for me, as well as a few real letters. Oscar was right. Many women were offering me comfort. Haley thought it was great. I didn't. I liked my anonymity. Mom and Mel were with Haley, but for a different reason. I think they were already looking for a replacement for Claire. Dad, Sean, and I finally came up with a plan for revenge. It wasn't what I wanted. Being old-fashioned, I would have preferred to just meet the jerk, challenge him to a duel, and let the strongest man win. Hell, I even fantasized about living a few hundred years earlier and being able to challenge him to a duel. It annoyed me that we lived in a time when the laws seemed to protect the guilty rather than the innocent. The way things were going, if I had kicked Ratzak's ass, that snotty bastard could have accused me of assault, and I could have ended up behind bars. And sitting behind bars protecting my ass, literally, didn't seem like much of an achievement to me. Neither was beating him up anonymously or paying someone else to do it. When I told my dad and Sean about it, they laughed so hard they held their sides. So I guess that was the beginning. The worst part was when Aunt Sally came over and begged us not to turn our backs on Zach. She cried, saying that everyone was avoiding him. She blamed Claire, saying she had bewitched him. Mom cried too, but she stood her ground. Sally, I understand that you need to support your son, but please don't talk to me like I'm stupid. Bewitched? This isn't one or two isolated incidents, it's years of lies and deceit. He deserves to be cast out for his deep betrayal of Danny. Have you read the letters? Have you read how he enjoyed humiliating Danny? Have you read what he did? He had fun with her on her wedding day to Danny, for God's sake. How can you ask us to forgive that? Please, Ellie, for my sake. Please, I can't abandon him. He's my son. And he's so sorry for everything. I know he did wrong, but he's my son. I know, Sally, but I can't. We can't. Danny is my son. And if you stay on Zach's side, I'm afraid you won't be welcome in my house anymore. My heart trembled as Aunt Sally picked up her bag and slung it over her forearm so that it rested on her elbow. She walked over to my mother and hugged her tightly, the bag swinging and jingling as it bumped against her hips. I wanted to film it and send it to Claire and Ratzak to show them the price of their selfishness. Maybe then they would understand that none of us live in isolation. Our actions affect others. Like a pebble thrown into a pond, they cause ripples. But on the other hand, maybe they won't understand anything and will care even less. Mom pressed herself against Dad, and Mel let go of Aunt Sally. I stood there feeling helpless and tears filled my eyes from my mother's pain. I opened my mouth to tell her she shouldn't say goodbye to my sister on my behalf, but before I could say a word, my father shook his head and waved me away. The sight of my suffering mother strengthened my resolve. I would never forgive Claire and Ratzak for hurting her. Next chapter. Oh my God, it's working. It's really working, I whispered so quietly that the sound of the waves gently lapping against the side of my father's yacht almost drowned me out. I wasn't talking to anyone in particular, although Dad and Sean could hear me as they huddled close to me, listening to the muffled conversation coming from the landline phone. Did you think it wouldn't work? Sean asked quietly. I nodded. It's all so complicated, so much left to chance. What if he hadn't fallen in love with Crystal? All I can say is that it's a shame she only got him drunk. I wish she'd infected him with something real, my father muttered. After what he and Claire did to your mother, I think I want revenge as much as you do. The prostitute, or Lady of the Night as my father called her, didn't look professional. Crystal looked quite elegant. We paid her a lot of money, but she was worth every penny. From the looks of it, Zach was practically drooling over her. Apparently, Claire was never part of his plan. Dad, being Dad, took every precaution. He even made Crystal sign a non-disclosure agreement. I'm sure it was her first time. I had no idea if it would hold up in court or if she would use her real name, but if it made Dad feel better, I wasn't going to argue. When she realized who I was, she must have listened to Haley and Oscar. She even brought in one of her friends to help her get even with Zach at no extra charge. Apparently, even prostitutes don't like liars and cheaters. With the money I gave them, Sean bought 2 cell phones. One belonged to Our Lady of the Night, the other to us. Only our number was saved in her phone. Following our instructions, she called so we could eavesdrop on her night with Ratzak. It was the 3rd such call, and I learned a lot I never suspected about my cousin's true feelings for me. He called me a Boy Scout and a Wonder Boy, and quite openly shared with Crystal and Amber what he had done. He showed no remorse whatsoever. He even bragged about how he had been taller than me for a long time. He told his mother how sorry he was. He cursed me for causing him to be kicked out of the family and his circle of friends. He said I was a spoiled, pretty boy who always got everything handed to me on a silver platter. I was stunned. I'm a handsome boy? Sean was a little angry too. None of us suspected that his jealousy and resentment were so deeply rooted in his childhood. I wish I could slip him something to speed up the process, Sean moaned. That idiot drinks like a fish. At this rate, Crystal and Amber won't be able to get him drunk by midnight. And I was hoping we could go fishing today. I snorted. You just want to see him wet his pants. Sean grunted in response. Yeah, right. Like you don't want to. It was your idea, remember? Patience, you two. Good things come to those who wait, although I'm looking forward to the shitstorm. Dad grinned, and in the dim light of the cabin, he looked angry. That was one of my criteria. I wanted Ratzak to literally drown in shit. Another criterion was that both of his arms had to be broken. It was a great metaphorical message to him to mind his own business and keep his hands off other people's wives. The fact that after his arms were broken and he was lying in shit, he wouldn't be able to wash his ass for a while was just an added bonus to reinforce an important lesson. But first, Crystal and her friend had to beat his ass and convince him to invite them back to his place. The house turned out to be a small, old townhouse with steep, narrow steps leading up to the bedroom, and he often joked that he was lucky he didn't break his neck coming down them drunk. But today, he wasn't so lucky. What? How about taking Amber and me back to your place and having some fun there, sweetie? I banged my forehead against my dad's and Sean's when we all instinctively leaned toward the phone, silently nudging Ratzak to take the bait. Sure, he whispered. Let's go have some fun. There was a soft sound like someone swallowing. I looked at Dad and Sean and we all shrugged. We listened for a few more seconds to make sure they were really leaving before getting up. Let's start the show, Sean exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. It'll be just like old times for you two, their dad teased. I guess apples don't fall far from the tree, huh, Dad? Sean teased. Sean teased, a smile still blooming on his face. Sean was right. Dad's jokes drove Mom crazy. I smiled at them. I couldn't think of two better accomplices for such a stunt. One by one, we climbed out of the boat and got into Dad's black SUV, chosen for this adventure precisely because of its color. The night was clear, fortunately, with a small moon. Perfect for what we had in mind. Luckily for us, Ratzak lived not far from the harbor, in an old part of town that was undergoing a revival in popularity. Many young couples were buying and renovating houses. Ratzak's small terrace was in a remote corner of the suburb, beyond which lay the harbor itself. There were two entrances to the street, and we knew he usually used the one facing the city, so we used the entrance on the harbor side and parked in the shadow of the building, away from the streetlights. Despite the lack of lighting, we huddled together, waiting for a signal from Crystal or Amber that it was safe to go in. It didn't take long, 15 minutes at most. We all put on the balaclavas, gloves, and dark baseball caps we had bought in preparation. We looked like a parody of ninjas. One by one, hugging the walls of the buildings to use their shadows as cover, we made our way to Ratzak's terrace. I felt like I was part of a secret spy operation. My heart was beating like crazy, but at the same time it was hard not to laugh. I imagined what the three of us would look like if this scene were being filmed. I decided it would probably be Will Ferrell, not Matt Damon. Sean pointed two fingers at his eyes and then at the front door of Ratzak's house, an old gesture meaning, look, watch. The girls followed his instructions and kindly opened the door a crack. We slipped inside and quietly made our way to Ratzak's kitchen. We could hear music, murmuring, and giggling upstairs in the master bedroom. He probably thought he was in for a night of debauchery with two hotties, although considering how much he'd had to drink, I doubted he'd be able to pull it off. I pulled the baseball bat out of my pants. I leaned it against the wall. None of us looked at it. This part of the plan was the hardest. I'll go downstairs and fill our glasses. I couldn't tell which of them, Amber or Crystal, had spoken, but Crystal appeared at the foot of the stairs. Ever cautious, Dad put his finger to his lips, signaling her to be quiet. Nodding, she went to the refrigerator and took out 3 bottles of dirty liquid. Perfect. The sweet taste would mask the laxative better than Ratzak's usual poisons, beer or cruiser vodka. The dexterity with which she opened the bottles showed that she was far from drunk. She threw the caps on the counter, brought 1 bottle to her mouth, and took a big gulp. Dad took out his contribution to the evening's festivities, a laxative he called industrial strength. It was stronger and faster acting than anything you could buy over the counter. He had gone to the doctor complaining of severe constipation and left with a prescription. Crystal held the slide up to her father, and he poured several crushed pills into it. Winking at her father, Crystal covered the opening of the bottle with her thumb and shook it gently to dissolve the powder. Wiping her finger on a kitchen towel, she winked at us again and went upstairs. We listened to the clinking of glasses and cheerful laughter, And soon Crystal returned for more. She and her father repeated their ritual. It took 6 more rounds to use up all the laxative. When Crystal climbed the stairs for the last time, Sean covered his mouth with his hand to keep from laughing. He's going to shit through a needle's eye, he sighed. If he doesn't explode first, my father whispered, equally amused. Come on, honey, drink up, we heard Crystal urge. 5 long minutes passed. It was agonizing. Finally, both girls came down the stairs looking neither drunk nor even tipsy. If drunkenness were an Olympic sport, this pair would be medalists. He passed out, Amber whispered, though it probably wasn't necessary. Have fun, guys. It was nice dealing with you. As soon as they were out the door, we tiptoed up the stairs, me in front. Ratzak was lying face down on the bed, his jeans down around his ankles. Perfect. Another reason why he passed out. To be on the safe side, I slapped him on the cheek, then on the ass. No reaction. He was unconscious. I turned him over and positioned myself over his torso. Sean grabbed his legs. It was awkward, and I almost fell myself, but we made it down the stairs without incident. Ratzak didn't make a sound. He was really out of it. We laid him down at the bottom of the stairs, and I took out the bat. That was the hardest part. I took a few deep breaths, remembering everything he had done to Claire, everything he had despised me for, all the betrayals, all the times he had looked me in the eye and lied to me. I imagined my mother crying as she said goodbye to my sister for the last time. I remembered how he made me participate in his lies for my own entertainment. I thought about how he entertained Claire on my wedding day, how excited he was that she was pregnant, and how I, unaware of this, was raising his child. And then I pushed those thoughts away. Dad put his hand on my shoulder. It's okay that you don't like harsh justice, but I don't want you to ever regret this. The punishment is well-deserved. I staggered but stayed on my feet and nodded, unable to speak. For a while, we all looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Should we leave? Wait for the fireworks to start? Guys, I think we should go. We left as quietly as we had come. We didn't say a word until we got back to the cabin. We all laughed, but it was a forced laugh. I hoped even more that my father and brother would never regret helping me get justice. When my father took us out to the open sea, Sean and I cut up our clothes, gloves, balaclavas, and caps and threw them overboard. The baseball bat stayed on the boat. My father used it when a shark got caught on the hook, and I just put it back in its place in the small locker. We dropped anchor, cast our lines, drank brandy, and talked about everything except what was on our minds. Next chapter. Oh my God, you won't believe what happened at work today, Mel exclaimed, throwing her purse on the kitchen table and joining us on the patio. As soon as Declan and Maddie heard their mother, they left Sean and me lying on our backs on the lawn, where we had been wrestling with them. Mom, I rolled onto my side. Well, I guess that shows where we are, Sean grinned. Enjoy it while it lasts. In an hour, they'll get tired of Mom and want to tickle Dad and Uncle Danny. Rest while you can. For a moment, my heart sank. I wondered if I would ever have the opportunity to make my child miss me. I jumped to my feet and held out my arms to Sean. I picked him up and we dusted ourselves off before joining Mom and Dad. Mom handed us each a glass of beer. A few minutes later, Mel joined us and sat the kids down in front of the TV with a movie playing. Nemo should keep them busy for a while. So how was work? Mom asked. You won't believe it. The paramedics brought in Zach with broken wrists. Apparently, he got drunk and fell down the stairs, but Mel burst out laughing. She tried to calm down. But the best part is, she paused again. Oh my God. She couldn't hold back her laughter again. He pooped himself, she moaned, covering her mouth with her hand. He has terrible diaper rash. Mel was already crying, and it made her laugh. We were all laughing, and I had to fight not to look at Sean and Dad, keeping my eyes on Mel. Diaper rash? I asked. Mel wiped her face with her fingertips and nodded. Yes, he was lying in his own excrement for so long that he got really bad diaper rash. He's the laughingstock of the hospital. Karma. You reap what you sow, Mom muttered with satisfaction. I smiled. The universe had given me a bonus in the form of diaper rash. He always drank too much, Dad added with a smirk. Next chapter. The months that followed were a long and terrible journey. Claire kept her word. She took off the gloves and intended to make me pay for making her love letters public. Apparently, it was up to others to forgive, not her. Of course, her anger was fueled by the fact that the letters refused to die a natural death. Like a bad smell, they kept coming back. Every 2 weeks or so, they would pop up on some forum or social media site. Someone even parodied them on YouTube. In my opinion, it went viral. Their persistence kept Claire on edge, and she was determined to destroy me. First, she tried to get half of my loan payments from my parents, but the court ruled that the debt had to be paid off before she could get her share of the savings. Her next move was to evict me from the cottage, but the judge saw no reason to change the status quo, especially after I suggested turning to a mediator to settle our financial differences and save the court time and money. Mediation worked against Claire. The more I backed down, the angrier she became. More than once, the mediator had to ask her to calm down. She tried to get a share of my business, but she couldn't because my parents made me set it up. Another piece of wise advice for which I will be forever grateful to them. After one particularly harsh text message sent late at night, which I believe was triggered by a new wave of social media attacks and comments on numerous emails, I went to the next mediation session armed with a list designed to embarrass Claire. I scored points for her lack of savings. She, like me, was supposed to put 10% of her income aside, but according to her bank statements, she hadn't saved a cent since we moved into this house, while I had saved much more than we had agreed. The mediator, who incidentally was a woman, was shocked when I listed the number of shoes, 57 pairs, that belonged to Claire. I paused for a moment, then added the number of designer handbags she had in her closet at the time of the breakup, 127, and asked if she would give me access so I could choose 30 or 40 as part of her property, since that was all she could show for her supposed savings. In the end, the mediator convinced Claire not to try to get half of my $10,000 in savings, saying that given my evidence that I had paid for virtually everything except groceries, throughout our marriage she would recommend to the court that I not be punished for my thriftiness. And Claire agreed. However, by the end of the year, I was tired of these games and convinced Claire to agree to sell the house unfurnished. I didn't need it anymore. I wanted to move on with my life so that nothing around me would remind me of the devil in a woman's clothing that my wife had been. The mediator supported this idea. The apartment sold fairly quickly, and I must admit that I felt a great sense of satisfaction when it was all over, and I handed Claire a check for just over $1,000. That was about $100 a year for our marriage. I could live with that. With the financial matters settled, I filed for divorce. I sent Claire to work not so much out of a desire to humiliate her as because I didn't know where she had spent the last 12 months. I did it of my own accord. I needed to distance myself. On the first night, a few days before I filed, when I realized I had gone through the entire day without thinking about her, I experienced an indescribable feeling. There are no words in any language known to man that can convey the feeling of elation I experienced. I felt like a dying man must feel when he is told his illness is in remission. I actually cried. I leaned my forehead against the table and sobbed like a child out of gratitude. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't hold them back. This time, I didn't hold them back. I didn't hold them back because they weren't tears for Claire. They weren't tears for the loss of my marriage. They weren't tears of resentment and bitterness. And they weren't even tears of anger and rage. They were tears of relief, pure, unadulterated relief. It was the realization that there would be life after Claire. Maybe even love after Claire. It was the final cleansing of my heart, the final release from negative emotions. They washed away everything that tied me to Claire. They weren't harmful. They were healing. They freed me from the past and I let them flow. And when they finally subsided, I laughed. I was free. Sure, there were some details to work out, but emotionally, in all the important ways, I was free. It was a powerful feeling, a life-changing feeling. That night was the beginning. A real new beginning, when I was finally able to sleep through the night. I could finally enjoy my food and really taste what was passing my lips. And best of all, I finally felt at peace. It was so healing, so therapeutic, that I tried my hardest to appreciate the feeling. I didn't want to get caught up in Claire and our fake marriage again. And at some point, I realized that I no longer felt the need to tear Claire apart with my words. I got what I wanted. Indifference. Complete and utter indifference. All this time, my family supported me, put up with my mood swings, my rants about Claire's latest antics, my bad days when I despaired that this nightmare would never end. I don't know how I would have coped without their love, patience, and support. Ratty left town without even suspecting that I was the one who smashed his forehead and set his ass on fire. It just goes to show that you can't drink your life away. I heard he moved to Sydney. Strangely enough, I felt sorry for him. Our family was large but close-knit. There were many birthdays, anniversaries, engagements, and weddings, and he was no longer on the guest list for any of them. And he was probably tormented by guilt because his mother wasn't invited either. I hoped it weighed heavily on him. One of the highlights of that year was Haley. We became friends. One evening, she asked me why I no longer felt the need to talk to Claire about what she had done. As I expressed my feelings, I realized that it was pointless. Claire wouldn't hear me. She wasn't capable of it. At best, it would be an accusatory exchange that would lead nowhere. At worst, it would help her justify herself to herself. And while she couldn't hurt me anymore, I wasn't going to help her ease her conscience at my expense and listen to her try to justify her actions with a bunch of lies and self-deception. During another evening with Haley, I realized one thing. I was a romantic who married for love, and Claire was an actress who married her second star, the leading man who was supposed to showcase her beauty and talent. My relationship with Haley was platonic. I loved her madly, and her light touches and warm glances told me that she liked me too. But I didn't want to start an affair and hurt her or myself. When I decided to take the first step, I had to be sure that I was acting, not reacting. I wanted this decision to be made willingly, not out of necessity. I was honest with her. She deserved my honesty. I told her that I was in a dark place and that because of my admiration and respect for her, I didn't want to pursue a relationship until I had found my way out of the darkness. I will never forget her smile when she asked me, "Are you saying that I am your light at the end of the tunnel?" Next chapter. I stood at the mailbox of my new home and looked at the official envelope in my hand. I knew what was inside without even opening it. It was my final decision. Without looking back, I walked to my car and got in. At every traffic light, at every stop, I looked at the envelope lying on the passenger seat. It was over. Finally, it was over. And then I stopped looking at it and focused on the road to my future. Who knew how things would turn out with Haley? Neither me nor her. But I had a good feeling. I was ready to take a chance. I was ready to explore that feeling. I sped up, now impatient. I needed the light at the end of the tunnel and I was heading toward it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.